The message that froze the galaxy. The first human message did not contain a threat. That was what terrified them most. It arrived across every military channel, civilian relay, and diplomatic band simultaneously, encoded in formats the Galactic Council hadn't even known humans possessed. Their primitive species, barely 2 centuries into faster-than-light travel, had no business speaking with such quiet certainty. The message was only 9 words long. We know what you did. We are coming. No demands. No negotiations. No deadlines. No theatrics. Just a statement of fact. High Admiral Zyril of the Carthane Imperium stared at the transmission in silence. Around him, the command amphitheater pulsed with nervous light, bioluminescent officers shifting their chitin in agitation. "This must be a bluff," one of his subordinates said, voice trembling through a translator implant. "They lack the fleet capacity." Zyril didn't answer immediately. He was old. Old enough to remember when humans had first crawled into galactic awareness like frightened animals holding stolen fire. Soft creatures. Emotional. Weak. Predictable. Perfect prey. "They do not bluff," Zyril said quietly. He knew. Because the Carthane had murdered their colony at New Carthage. Not destroyed. Not conquered. Murdered. The humans there had surrendered. They had transmitted pleas. They had offered tribute, resources, labor. They had begged. The Carthane slaughtered them anyway. 112,000 civilians burned alive in vacuum when their atmosphere processors were sabotaged. Another 30,000 died slowly when orbital strikes crippled their habitats but left them intact enough to suffocate over hours instead of seconds. It had been an example. A lesson. The Imperium believed fear was more efficient than diplomacy. And for centuries it had been. Until now. Zyril flexed his talons against the armrest. "Recall the fleets," he ordered. His officers froze. "My lord." "All of them." The officer hesitated. "That would expose 17 occupied systems." "I am aware." The officer swallowed. "Do you believe they will retaliate?" Zyril stared at the 9 words. He had studied humans. Their history fascinated him. They fought each other constantly. Brutally. Pointlessly. But there was one pattern. One law. When humans decided something was unforgivable, they did not stop. They did not compromise. They did not forgive. "They will not retaliate," Zyril said softly. "They will exterminate." 6 months later, the first Carthane fleet vanished. No distress call. No debris. Just gone. 73 warships. 300,000 crew. Gone. The Council panicked. Emergency sessions convened across hundreds of species. "Piracy?" one delegate suggested weakly. "Impossible," another replied. "Not at that scale." "Then what?" No one said the word. Humanity. They weren't supposed to be capable of this. Their ships were slower. Their weapons were weaker. Their technology inferior. Until the second fleet vanished. This time there was footage. It came from a crippled surveillance buoy, drifting dead in space, its systems barely functioning. The Council watched in horrified silence. Human ships dropped out of warp. But they weren't ships anymore. They were monsters. The vessels had been modified beyond recognition. Their hulls were scarred, layered with armor plates welded on without concern for elegance or efficiency. Their drives burned with unstable radiation signatures. Entire sections appeared cannibalized from other vessels. Improvised. Brutal. Purpose-built for one thing, killing. And at their center was something worse. A carrier. Massive. Ancient. The registry still faintly visible beneath layers of scorched metal. UNSCV Mercy of Dawn. It had been a hospital ship. Now it was a weapon. The Carthane fleet fired first. Brilliant beams of plasma lanced across the void. The human ships did not evade. They absorbed the hit. Armor shattered. Whole sections vented atmosphere. They kept coming. Closer. Closer. Until they were inside minimum safe engagement distance. Then they rammed. The footage showed the Mercy of Dawn accelerating directly into the Carthane flagship. No hesitation. No course correction. Impact. The collision released more energy than a fusion detonation. But that wasn't the end. Human boarding craft poured from the wreckage. They had used the collision as delivery. Marines in blackened armor cut their way into surviving Carthane vessels. What followed wasn't war. It was execution. The footage showed human soldiers moving through corridors filled with fire and vacuum, firing projectile weapons instead of energy beams. Primitive, reliable, personal. One human removed his helmet briefly. His face was older, scarred, calm. He spoke directly into a combat recorder. "For New Carthage." Then he vented an entire Carthane command deck into space. Silence filled the council chamber. Finally, one delegate whispered the question no one wanted to ask. Why? No one answered. Because they already knew. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't conquest. This was revenge. And humanity had only just begun. 3 weeks later, the second message arrived. Again, 9 words. This is not war. This is consequence. High Admiral Zyril closed his eyes when he saw it. He had hope. Foolishly. That humans would behave like everyone else. That they would negotiate. That they would accept tribute. That they would be reasonable. He had misunderstood them completely. Humans weren't reasonable. Humans were patient. And patience was far more dangerous. He opened a private channel. "Prepare my personal vessel," he ordered. His aide hesitated. "You intend to flee?" Zyril looked at the stars. "No. I intend to apologize." He already knew it wouldn't matter. Because humans didn't negotiate with murderers. And the galaxy was about to learn why. When humanity shows no mercy, the galaxy had time to panic. Not to act. Not to prepare. Just to panic. Reports came in from sectors the Carthane had considered secure. One by one, human ships appeared where they shouldn't exist. Ghosts in the warp, silent hunters striking at the very heart of occupied systems. Entire command stations vanished without warning. Civilian transports carrying Carthane officials were found drifting, airlocks open, their crews long gone. But the humans weren't careful. They didn't need to be. The survivors spoke of ships that looked like they were stitched together from scrapyards, of weapons that melted metal, tore apart shields, and screamed with firepower nobody had calibrated before. They spoke of Marines who moved through corridors like ghosts, their projectile rifles singing with deadly rhythm, their laughter echoing through the wreckage. "They are unrelenting," whispered Admiral Tsal, voice trembling. "They don't retreat, they don't surrender. They simply punish." Meanwhile, the Council tried diplomacy. Messages, envoys, ultimatums, all ignored. Humanity responded only with fact and fury. And then came the twist no one expected. The humans didn't just attack where the Carthane were strongest. They attacked where the Carthane thought themselves untouchable. A Carthane weapons depot orbiting the mining colony of Vather Prime had been considered impenetrable. Its shields could withstand a dozen direct hits from the largest known human ships, or so the Imperium thought. On the morning of the strike, surveillance sensors recorded something strange. A tiny human frigate emerged from a nebula. Alone. No fleet. No backup. Only a single craft, moving with confidence, as if it carried the weight of the entire human race in its hull. The frigate docked with the depot. Cameras picked up a human stepping onto the observation platform, his armor scratched and scorched, but his posture unbroken. In his hand, a device no Carthane engineer recognized. A simple black cylinder with blinking lights. He pressed it. The depot erupted. Not in a conventional explosion, but in a slow, deliberate dismantling. Weapons melted, shields failed, systems self-destructed in a cascade. Within minutes, the depot was nothing but a floating lattice of molten metal, drifting silently into the void. No human ship remained. No casualties reported. Only the faint broadcast across channels. "For New Carthage." Consider this mercy. The council watched, horrified. They had studied humans for decades. They knew their capacity for war. They knew their ingenuity. But even the most seasoned delegates had not anticipated precision vengeance delivered with surgical elegance. Then came the reports from the field. Marines, human soldiers, were reportedly teaching alien troops a lesson in fear. In one encounter, a squad cornered a Carthane platoon in a ruined city. Instead of opening fire immediately, the humans spoke to them, laughed, taunted them, shared stories of the colony their ancestors had lost. Then, when the Carthane faltered, the humans struck, and left nothing behind but silence and debris. The galaxy began to whisper the word no one had dared to speak aloud: unpredictable. They expected humans to negotiate, to bargain, to bluff. But humans didn't bluff. Humans didn't bargain. Humans reminded the universe what it meant to survive. And yet there was more. The Carthane High Command, desperate and cornered, ordered a final gambit: target Earth itself. The logic was brutal but simple. Strike at the humans' homeworld, destroy their central command, and the species would crumble. But humanity had foreseen this. Not a single human ship was stationed in orbit when the Carthane fleet arrived. They expected a direct assault. They always did. Then, from hyperspace, the true fleet revealed itself. Ships previously thought incapable of FTL combat materialized around the Carthane armada. Not elegant vessels, not perfectly symmetrical warships, but living instruments of war, improvised dreadnoughts, repurposed carriers, scavenged mining ships, all fused into monstrous forms, each bristling with weaponry designed to exploit every weakness of the Carthane fleet. And leading them, the Mercy of Dawn, rebuilt and reforged into a titanic fortress of vengeance. Once a hospital ship, now a symbol. The Carthane opened fire. The humans didn't dodge. They accelerated straight into the maelstrom of plasma and missiles, absorbing, withstanding, and retaliating in ways that defied physics and sanity alike. Ships collided, detonations flared like miniature supernovae, and yet the humans pressed forward, boarding enemy vessels, executing targets, releasing prisoners who had survived the Imperium's atrocities. By the time the dust settled, the Carthane fleet was in complete disarray. Communications dead. Ships adrift. Morale shattered. The galaxy could only watch in disbelief. In private, a human officer logged into a universal broadcast. "We didn't come for war. We came for justice. If you call it terror, remember who began it." And for the first time in galactic history, the phrase human unpredictability became a military doctrine across species, not to emulate but to fear. The Council had one last realization before the humans disappeared back into the stars. Humanity's vengeance was not limited by honor, by etiquette, or by expectation. Humanity was a force that refused to be measured, constrained, or tamed. And the galaxy, for all its advanced civilizations, had no choice but to acknowledge it. The reckoning of the Carthane. The Carthane thought they understood war. They were wrong. By the time humans struck the third system, entire fleets had vanished, not because of overwhelming firepower alone, but because humans knew fear and used it as a weapon. Ships surrendered without a fight, not to mercy, but to the calculated certainty that resistance meant annihilation. Commanders reported strange messages broadcast across their own channels. "You will have time to regret your choices. We grant this as courtesy." And then, when the time ran out, destruction. In the system of Arvath Prime, a Carthane admiral finally attempted to rally his forces. He gathered what remained of his fleets, desperate, and sent a transmission. "You cannot survive this. Withdraw or perish." The humans responded, as always, with precision and terror. But it wasn't just the fleet. Humans had begun turning the Imperium's own technology against them. Mining ships were converted into artillery platforms. Colonists' orbital habitats became launch points for boarding craft. Even communication satellites were reprogrammed as relay bombs, detonating in the very midst of Carthane command node. The Admiral realized, too late, that the humans weren't just punishing the guilty, they were remapping the rules of engagement entirely. He activated a failsafe, a cloaked dreadnought, its engines capable of a near-instant jump, designed to escape any trap. It was their last hope. But humans anticipated it. The Mercy of Dawn, or what remained of her, appeared in the jump corridor, a steel leviathan humming with stolen plasma coils and jury-rigged graviton cannons. Boarding craft dropped from her belly like hornets from a hive. Within minutes, the dreadnought's crew reported massive breaches, fires, and total system shutdowns. Then came the human officer, stepping into the bridge amid smoke and sparks. Her armor scorched, her boots crunching on debris, she spoke into a recorder that broadcast across every system in the sector. For New Carthage. For every life you stole. There is no negotiation, only reckoning. The Carthane watched as their most feared weapon became a corpse. Systems failing. Command nodes fried. Officers vented into the vacuum in silence. The galaxy again recoiled. Even distant species who had watched cautiously now began to whisper. Humans don't fight. They teach lessons. But the humans' most shocking act was yet to come. While the Carthane were scrambling, the humans turned their own communications against them. Using salvaged Imperium satellites and a handful of repurposed warships, the humans broadcast the image of every atrocity the Carthane had committed. The burning of New Carthage. The suffocation of the colonists. Every act, every crime, every plea that had been ignored. And over it, a calm, terrifying message. Your actions define your fate. We deliver only what you earned. Systems loyal to the Imperium began to rebel. Fleets mutinied. Governors surrendered. Even loyal Carthane citizens could no longer deny the weight of the humans' moral calculus. Humanity didn't just kill the guilty. They exposed the truth, weaponized morality as effectively as any plasma cannon. Admiral Zyril, hiding on what remained of his flagship, realized the final truth. Humans weren't just a military threat, they were a universal reckoning. He sent one final transmission, a plea. Humans, we yield. Please, spare. But it never arrived. The humans didn't intercept it. They didn't need to. By the time the message would have reached its intended recipient, Zyril had already been captured alive, transported to a human tribunal floating above what had once been the capital of Carthane control in Arvath. The humans didn't kill him immediately. That would have been too easy. Instead, they let him see the devastation, the truth of his failures. And then they spoke, the calmest voice imaginable cutting through the tension like a scalpel. You killed innocents. You surrendered their lives to your arrogance. We gave you time. You chose death. Now you will understand why humans do not negotiate with murderers. And for the first time, Zyril felt a fear no technology, no weapon, no fleet could ever induce. Because humanity wasn't just here to win battles. Humanity was here to rewrite the meaning of victory itself. The galaxy understood, in that instant, that no species had ever faced opponents like this. They were clever. They were brutal. They were patient. And they never forgot. When the humans departed, they didn't just leave fleets in ruins. They left a galaxy that would never underestimate them again. Humanity's final word. The galaxy waited. Or at least, it thought it could. Humans didn't linger. They didn't occupy worlds, don't garrison fleets, don't parade victory in triumphant displays. They moved like shadows, leaving evidence of their presence but never overstaying. Entire systems once under Carthane control were liberated, not by diplomacy, not by treaties, but by quiet human cunning. In the system of Vathor Prime, where the first human strike had begun, the Council's delegates finally received a report from survivors. Humans had rebuilt the world from the ashes of war, not for conquest, but for life. Habitats once destroyed were restored, terraforming drones buzzing through skies, planting crops and rebuilding cities. Colonists returned to the stars their oppressors had claimed. And in orbit, the Mercy of Dawn, now a floating citadel of battered yet unbroken hull, hovered silently, a warning and a promise. It wasn't just victory. It was a statement. The humans had proven a terrifying lesson. You could try to break them. You could slaughter their innocents, burn their colonies, and crush their people. But humanity would not bend, would not bow, and would not forgive until justice had been done. Galactic ambassadors began receiving messages in the same simple, devastating format humans had used before. 9 words. No explanations. No rhetoric. We remember. We see. We will act. The Carthane Imperium, the species that had believed themselves untouchable, was reduced to whispers, a cautionary tale. Entire fleets were left in limbo, their crews mutinous, their leaders gone or captured. The galaxy had never seen a force wield morality and vengeance as a weapon before. Humans didn't just fight, they taught consequences, with brutal clarity and terrifying patience. Yet humanity didn't celebrate. They didn't revel in the destruction they caused. Their Marines, those who had walked through fire and vacuum to punish the guilty, returned to their ships quietly, logging losses and victories with cold precision. One officer, logging a message into the universal relay, spoke with a mixture of grief and wry humor. We're not monsters. We're reminders. And some lessons need to hurt to be remembered. In the weeks that followed, the Council realized the final, uncomfortable truth. Humans had changed the galaxy forever. Their technology, yes, but more than that, their philosophy of unyielding consequence, their tactical genius, their ability to combine brutality with moral clarity, and their absolute refusal to negotiate with murderers. It was a doctrine no species wanted to face, a reality that even the most advanced civilizations could not prepare for. The final twist came quietly. A Carthane delegate, speaking to the council, asked a question in disbelief. How could such a species, so primitive, wield power so absolute? The answer was simple. And terrifying. Because humans were not primitive. Not in courage. Not in strategy. Not in heart. They were terrifyingly human. And as the mercy of dawn vanished back into the void, repaired and reforged, ready to strike wherever injustice persisted, the galaxy learned the last, most critical lesson. Do not mistake patience for weakness. Do not mistake civility for submission. Do not mistake humanity for something you can bargain with. Humans don't negotiate with murderers. They deliver justice in ways no one will ever forget. And somewhere in the deep reaches of space, far beyond Carthane fleets and council chambers, a human captain looked out at the stars, scarred, tired, but unbroken. He whispered to no one but the void. We're coming. Always. The galaxy shivered, and history began to remember humanity not as another species, but as the reckoning. End of story.